Have you ever held a piece of history in your hands? Not a replica, not something from a museum case, but a tangible fragment of a time long past. Right here, resting in my palm, is one such fragment. It's a $1 bill, but not like any you'd find in your wallet today. This one was printed in 1877. Feel the texture with me, just for a moment. The paper, incredibly thin and fragile, feels like a dried autumn leaf. It's a miracle it has survived all these years. The edges are soft and worn, a testament to the countless hands it has passed through. The ink, once a bold declaration of value, has faded to a gentle whisper. The intricate designs, the portrait of George Washington, they're still there, but softened by time, like a distant memory. This isn't just money. It's a story of a nation in the throes of transformation. 1877... Think about that. The Civil War was still a fresh, raw wound in the national memory. The period of Reconstruction was drawing to a close, a complex and tumultuous era of trying to piece a broken country back together. This single dollar bill was there for it all. Imagine the first person who held it. Perhaps it was a farmer in the Midwest, finally paid for his harvest after a long season. He might have tucked it away carefully, a symbol of his hard work and a promise for his family's future. Or maybe it was a newly freed man in the South, this note representing a new, uncertain beginning, a tangible piece of his freedom and the economic struggles that came with it. This dollar could have been his first earned wage, a profound symbol of a new life. From there, where did it travel? Did it jingle in the pocket of a prospector heading west, dreaming of gold and a new frontier? The late 1870s were the height of the westward expansion, a time of cowboys, railroads cutting across the plains, and the dramatic clashes of the Indian Wars. This dollar might have paid for a train ticket, a meal in a dusty saloon, or a parcel of land that would become a family homestead for generations. It could have been slipped into the collection plate at a newly built church, a community's offering of faith and hope. Or maybe it was used to buy a ticket to one of the first traveling circuses, bring in a moment of wonder and laughter to a town weary from hardship. Each transaction, exchange, added another layer to its story, another invisible fingerprint on its delicate surface. Think of the technological marvels it witnessed. In 1877, Thomas Edison was just patenting the phonograph. The telephone was a brand new, almost magical invention. This dollar bill existed in a world lit by gas lamps and powered by steam. It predates the first automobile, the first airplane, the first skyscraper. Holding it is like holding a key to that world, a world so different from our own, yet one that laid the very foundation of everything we know today. The design itself is a work of art. Look at the intricate scrollwork, the detailed engravings. In an age before mass digital printing, creating something like this was a craft. Every line was etched by a skilled artist. The very act of printing money was a statement of national identity and stability. This bill was a promise from the United States government, a symbol of unity and economic strength in a time when both were desperately needed. Look at the signature of the Treasurer of the United States. It's not a printed facsimile, it's a detailed engraving of a real signature. These names belong to real people who guided the nation's finances through a turbulent period. They weren't just bureaucrats. They were stewards of a post-war economy, navigating challenges we can only read about in history books. Let's trace its possible journey through the decades. It survived the Gilded Age, an era of incredible wealth for some and grinding poverty for others. It might have been saved in a tin can, buried in a backyard during the Panic of 1893. It saw the turn of the 20th century, the dawn of a new era filled with both immense promise and impending global conflict. It circulated as the world plunged into the Great War, then celebrated the Roaring Twenties, and was perhaps hidden under a mattress during the Great Depression. Each economic boom and bust, each period of peace and war, this small piece of paper endured. It passed from a parent to a child, from a shopkeeper to a customer, weaving its way through the fabric of American life. It's humbling, really. This dollar has outlived the people who first created and used it. It has seen empires rise and fall. It has witnessed a technological revolution that would have been unimaginable in 1877. And yet, here it is. Its intrinsic value as currency is long gone. but its value as a historical artifact, as a storyteller, is immeasurable. It makes you think about the money in your own pocket. We see it as disposable, a means to an end. But every coin, every bill, is on its own journey. It's a silent witness to our lives, our transactions, our hopes, and our needs. In 100 years, will someone hold a $2024 bill and wonder about the world it came from? Will they wonder about us? This old dollar is more than just an antique. It's a whisper from the past, a direct link to the people who built the world we inherit. It reminds us that history isn't just something in books. It's something we can touch, something we can feel. It's a quiet testament to resilience, to the passage of time, and to the endless, unfolding story of a nation. It's the story of us, told through the journey of a single, fragile piece of paper. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. If you found this as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories hidden in plain sight. We're just getting started. See you in the next chapter. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today, we are rewinding the clock back to a pivotal year in American history, 1877. That's a year that doesn't always grab the headlines like 1776 or 1861. But it was a moment of profound transformation, a time when the very soul of the nation was being reforged in the fires of change. To understand the America of today, we have to understand the America of 1877. So, grab a seat, and let's journey back together. Imagine a country just 12 years removed from the devastating Civil War. The wounds were still raw, the memories vivid, the grand, noble experiment of Reconstruction, the effort to rebuild the South and integrate 4 million newly freed African Americans into the fabric of society, was coming to a dramatic and controversial end. In 1877, the last of the federal troops stationed in the South were withdrawn. For many, this felt like a betrayal, the abandonment of a promise. For others, it was seen as the restoration of home rule. This single act set the stage for decades of struggle over civil rights and racial justice, the echoes of which we still hear today. It was a nation grappling with its own identity, asking itself what it truly meant to be united. But while political tides were turning, another revolution was thundering across the landscape, quite literally. This was the age of the railroad. Ribbons of steel were being laid at a breathtaking pace, stitching together a continent. Think about what this meant. Before the railroads, crossing the country was a perilous, months-long journey by wagon. Suddenly, that journey could be made in a matter of days. A farmer in Kansas could now sell his wheat to markets in New York or even London. A factory owner in Pittsburgh could source raw materials from California. The railroad didn't just move goods. It moved people, ideas, and ambitions. It shrank the nation, creating a truly national economy for the first time. Towns and cities sprouted up along the tracks, their fortunes rising and falling with the whistle of the locomotive. This network of iron and steam was the circulatory system of a new, industrial America, and what an industrial America it was becoming. The late 19th century is often called the Gilded Age, and for good reason. On the surface, it was a time of immense wealth and dazzling innovation. Names that are now legendary: Carnegie, Rockefeller, Vanderbilt were building empires in steel, oil, and finance. Factories churned out products at an unprecedented rate. Cities like New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia exploded in size, their skylines beginning to climb upwards. It was a time of boundless optimism for some, a belief that technology and industry could solve any problem and create limitless prosperity. The world looked at America with a mixture of awe and apprehension. This young, boisterous nation was flexing its industrial muscle and asserting itself on the world stage. However, if you peeled back the gilded layer, you'd find a different story. The immense wealth was concentrated in the hands of a very few. For the millions who toiled in the factories, mines, and mills, life was often brutal. Working conditions were dangerous, hours were long, and pay was meager. This was the year of the Great Railroad Strike of 1877. The country's first major national labor strike. It began as a protest against wage cuts and quickly spread across the country, paralyzing the nation's transportation network. It was a violent, chaotic, and ultimately unsuccessful uprising, but it was a sign of the deep tensions brewing beneath the surface. It marked the beginning of a long and often bloody struggle between labor and capital that would define the coming decades. So, you have this incredibly complex picture. A nation politically fractured, economically booming, and socially volatile. And at the heart of it all, connecting every aspect of life, was money. In a society undergoing such rapid change, trust is paramount. And that trust was literally minted into the currency. The stability of the US dollar was a reflection of the stability of the nation itself. After the financial chaos of the Civil War, with its various forms of paper money, the government was working hard to establish a reliable, trustworthy currency. The debate over gold versus silver standards wasn't just an economic argument. It was a battle over the future direction of the country. For people to invest in railroads, build factories, or even just buy their daily bread, they had to have faith in the piece of paper or the coin in their pocket. Money was more than just a medium of exchange. It was a symbol of national promise and stability in a world that felt anything but stable. Think about the sheer sensory experience of 1877. The air in the cities was thick with coal smoke. The constant clang of hammers on steel and the roar of machinery was the soundtrack of daily life. The streets were a chaotic mix of horse-drawn carriages, newly installed telephone wires overhead, and people from every corner of the globe speaking a multitude of languages. Meanwhile, in the vast expanses of the West, the traditional way of life for Native American tribes was being irrevocably destroyed as settlers, miners, and soldiers pushed further and further into their lands. The Battle of the Little Bighorn had happened just the year before. A shocking event for the nation, but it was ultimately a temporary victory in a losing war for the Plains tribes. America was a nation of stark, often brutal, contrasts. This was the year Thomas Edison would be working on the phonograph, a device that would capture sound itself, changing entertainment forever. Alexander Graham Bell had patented his telephone just a year earlier, and the device was beginning to weave its way into business and society, shrinking distances in a whole new way. These weren't just gadgets. They were revolutionary tools that altered the very perception of time and space. The pace of change was dizzying, and for the average person living through it, it must have been both exhilarating and terrifying. The world their parents knew was vanishing, and a new, uncertain future was arriving at the speed of a steam locomotive. So, when we look back at 1877, we see a nation at a crossroads. The end of Reconstruction closed one chapter of its history, while the rise of industry and the expansion of the railroad opened another. It was a year that set the stage for the modern America we know today, with all its triumphs, its tensions, and its enduring questions. It was a society wrestling with the meaning of freedom, the price of progress, and the challenge of building a unified nation out of a diverse and often conflicting population. The America of 1877 wasn't a finished product. It was a nation in transition, a dynamic and turbulent work in progress, much like the nation we live in today. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey back in time. I hope I gave you a new perspective on this fascinating and crucial year in history. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And do not forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next chapter. We love hearing from you, so please leave your thoughts and questions in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious. Hey everyone, welcome back to our series on the history of money. Today, we're diving into a pivotal moment in American history, the birth of a truly national currency. Before the Civil War, the United States didn't have the unified paper money system we know today. Imagine going from one state to another and having to figure out if the money in your pocket was even accepted. It was a chaotic landscape of thousands of different banknotes, issued by state-chartered private banks, each with its own design and, more importantly, its own level of trustworthiness. Some were solid, but many were not, leading to confusion and financial instability. This system was not just inconvenient. It was a significant obstacle to national economic growth. The outbreak of the Civil War in 1861 brought this issue to a boiling point. The Union needed a massive amount of money to fund the war effort, far more than it could raise through taxes alone. The existing banking system was simply not up to the task of financing such a large-scale conflict. The government tried issuing its own paper money, the famous greenbacks, but these were fiat currency, not backed by gold or silver, and their value fluctuated wildly with the Union's battlefield fortunes. A more stable and reliable source of funding was desperately needed. This immense pressure created the perfect storm for a radical transformation of the American financial system. Enter Simon P. Chase, the Secretary of the Treasury under President Abraham Lincoln. Chase envisioned a new system that would not only help finance the war but also create a stable, uniform currency for the entire nation. His solution was a set of landmark laws known as the National Banking Acts of 1863 and 1864. This legislation was revolutionary. It created a system of federally chartered banks, called national banks, that would operate alongside the existing state banks. This dual banking system, with both federal and state-chartered institutions, is a structure that, in a modified form, still exists in the United States today. So, how did this new system work? It was quite ingenious. To receive a federal charter, a bank had to purchase U.S. government bonds. This immediately created a new, stable market for government debt, providing the much-needed funds for the war. In return for purchasing these bonds, the national banks were authorized to issue their own banknotes. But with a crucial difference. These new notes were printed to a uniform design and standard by the federal government, and they were backed by the U.S. bonds the bank held on deposit with the Treasury. This meant that a dollar issued by a national bank in Ohio was identical in appearance and, more importantly, in value to a dollar issued by a national bank in New York. This was again, for the first time, the United States had a currency that was uniform in appearance and universally accepted at its face value across the country. These notes, known as national banknotes, featured intricate designs and the name of the specific bank that issued them, but they were all backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government via the bonds held in reserve. This created a level of public confidence that the old state banknotes could never achieve. People no longer had to worry about whether a note from a distant bank was worthless. If it was a national banknote, it was good. The federal government also took steps to push the old state banknotes out of circulation. In 1865, Congress passed a law that placed a 10% tax on all state banknotes. This tax made it unprofitable for state banks to continue issuing their own currency, effectively forcing them to either join the national system or switch their business model to focus on deposit accounts, which many did. Within a few years, the colorful and chaotic mess of state banknotes had all but disappeared, replaced by the uniform and reliable national banknotes. This move solidified the new national currency system and paved the way for a more integrated and powerful national economy. The impact of the National Banking Acts was profound and long-lasting. First and foremost, it provided critical financing that helped the Union win the Civil War. Second, it created the unified, stable currency that the rapidly industrializing nation desperately needed. This stable monetary foundation facilitated commerce, encouraged investment, and helped knit the country's diverse regional economies into a single, powerful economic unit. Business could now be conducted across state lines with a level of ease and certainty that was previously unimaginable. Of course, the system wasn't perfect. It had its own set of challenges, particularly its inequality. The money supply was tied to the amount of government bonds banks held, which didn't always expand or contract based on the actual needs of the economy. This rigidity would contribute to several financial panics in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. These later crises would eventually lead to the next major evolution in American finance, the creation of the Federal Reserve System in 1930. But that is a story for another chapter. The National Banking Acts of 1863 and 1864 represent the moment the United States truly got its financial act together. Born out of the crisis of the Civil War, this legislation laid the groundwork for the modern American banking system and created the first uniform national currency, a crucial step in the nation's journey to becoming a global economic superpower. It's a fascinating example of how moments of great crises can force innovation and lead to lasting, positive change. Thanks so much for watching this chapter of our story. I hope you found it interesting. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next episode, where we'll explore the challenges of this new system and the rise of the Federal Reserve. As always, drop your questions and comments below. I love reading them. See you next time. Hey everyone, and welcome back to our deep dive into the fascinating history of U.S. paper money. If you've ever looked at a modern dollar bill and wondered how it got its distinct look, you're in the right place. Today, we re-traveling back to a pivotal year that changed everything. 1877. This is just another date in a history book. It's the year that U.S. currency began to look and feel like the money we know today. So, grab your magnifying glass as we uncover why 1877 truly matters. Before 1877, American paper money was a bit of a Wild West. If you've been following our series, you will remember the diverse and sometimes chaotic designs of the Civil War era greenbacks and the early national bank notes. Notes varied widely in design, even for the same denomination. You could have a $5 bill from a bank in Ohio that looked completely different from a $5 bill issued by a bank in New York. Well, this created a rich tapestry of art and local pride. It also created confusion and opened the door for counterfeiters. The public had a hard time distinguishing real notes from fakes when there was no single, consistent design to reference. The Treasury Department knew something had to change. They needed a system, a standard, that would bring order, security, and a unified national identity to the nation's currency. The stage was set for a major overhaul, and the year 1877 would be the dawn of this new era. So, what exactly happened in 1877? The Treasury Department initiated a massive redesign project for its United States notes, also known as legal tender notes. This wasn't just a minor tweak or a new signature. This was a fundamental rethinking of what American money should look like. The goal was twofold. First, to create a more standardized and recognizable design language across all denominations, and second, to incorporate more advanced, anti-counterfeiting features. The series of 1875 notes, which were actually issued starting in 1877, became the vehicle for this grand experiment. These notes introduced new portraits, new vignettes, and a completely new layout philosophy that would influence paper money design for decades to come. Think of it as a complete brand refresh for the US dollar. Let's talk about one of the most significant changes, the portraits. Before this period, the subjects on our currency were a varied mix of historical figures, allegorical symbols, and even living politicians. As you can imagine, was sometimes controversial. The 1877 redesign began the process of cementing the iconic figures we associate with our money. For example, the $1 note of this era featured a striking portrait of George Washington, a choice that reinforced his status as the father of the nation. But it wasn't just about who was on the note. It was about how they were depicted. The engraving style became more refined and detailed. The portraits were larger, more prominent, and executed with a level of artistry that was difficult for counterfeiters to replicate. This focus on high-quality portraiture became a cornerstone of U.S. currency security, a principle that holds true even today. Another key innovation was the layout. The designers in 1877 moved away from the oft-included look of earlier notes. They embraced a more organized and balanced composition. Key elements, like the denomination, the Treasury seal, and the serial numbers were placed in consistent, logical positions. This made the notes easier to read and authenticate at a glance. One of the most beautiful examples from this period is the $5 note, often nicknamed the woodchopper note. On the back, it featured a stunning vignette of a pioneer family, symbolizing America's westward expansion and rugged individualism. This combination of a standardized layout with beautiful, meaningful artwork created a powerful new identity for American money. It was both a functional medium of exchange and a piece of national storytelling. The introduction of the red seal was also a major part of this 1877 standardization. While seals had been used before, the bright red scalloped seal on the United States notes of this series became an instant, recognizable feature. It added a splash of color and a layer of security. The intricate geometric lavework, those complex, spaghetti-like patterns that are so hard to copy, was also enhanced. The Treasury's Bureau of Engraving and Printing was essentially showing off its technical prowess, creating designs that were not only beautiful but also a nightmare for anyone trying to create a forgery. Every element, from the choice of font to the placement of the signatures, was deliberately chosen to create a cohesive and secure design. It was a masterclass in functional art. The impact of these 1877 changes was immediate and long-lasting. For the first time, a person in California and a person in Maine could hold a $1 United States note and see the exact same design. This fostered a sense of national unity and economic stability. The public quickly grew to trust these new, standardized notes, which in turn helped lubricate the wheels of commerce across the rapidly industrializing nation. The design principles established in this era became the blueprint for future series. The large portraits, the organized layouts, and the emphasis on high-quality engraving would be refined and adapted over the years. But the core philosophy born in 1877 remained. If you look at the Sawhorse Silver Certificates of 1886 or the Educational Series of 1896, you can see the direct lineage tracing back to the innovations of this pivotal period. In essence, 1877 was the year that U.S. paper money grew up. It transitioned from a somewhat haphazard collection of notes into a sophisticated, secure, and unified national currency. The decisions made by the Treasury Department back then laid the groundwork for the dollar's rise as a global reserve currency. It was a crucial step in building the trust and recognition that the U.S. dollar enjoys today. The legacy of 1877 isn't just in the specific notes printed that year, but in the very idea that our money should be a symbol of our nation's strength, stability, and identity, a standard for the world to see. So, the next time you handle a dollar bill, take a moment to appreciate its design, the familiar portrait, the clear denomination, the intricate patterns. Much of that design DNA can be traced directly back to the revolutionary changes that took place in 18. It is a piece of history right in your pocket. What a journey it's been, and we're not done yet. There's still so much more to explore in the story of American currency. Thank you so much for joining me on this numismatic adventure today. If you found this as fascinating as I do, please give this video a thumbs up. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. That way, you won't miss our next chapter, where we'll dive into another exciting era of U.S. paper money. Leave a comment below and let me know which historic note is your favorite. Until next time, keep exploring history. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our deep dive into the stories hidden in plain sight. Today, we're turning our attention to something millions of us handle every single day. The $1 bill. Specifically, we're going to focus on the man whose face has become synonymous with American currency, George Washington. This isn't just any portrait. It's a carefully chosen symbol, a piece of art that carries the weight of a nation's history. So, let's get our magnifying glasses out and take a closer look at the calm, steady gaze of the first president of the United States. The image of Washington we see on the dollar bill is probably the most reproduced portrait in the world. But have you ever stopped to think about where it came from? It's not just a random drawing. This specific likeness is based on the Athenaeum portrait, an unfinished painting by the renowned artist Gilbert Stuart, created in 1796. Stuart was famous for his ability to capture not just a person's physical features, but their inner character, their very essence. In this portrait, Washington was 64 years old, just 3 years before his passing. It shows a man who has weathered immense challenges. A leader who has seen the birth of a nation, and yet there's a profound sense of tranquility in his expression. Now, translating a detailed oil painting onto a tiny piece of paper money is no small feat. This is where the incredible skill of an engraver comes into play. The portrait on our dollar bill was masterfully engraved by Charles Burt in 1869. Engraving for currency is an art form that requires microscopic precision. Every line, every dot, every crosshatch is meticulously carved into a steel plate. Burt's job was to take Stuart's painted masterpiece and reinterpret it through a web of intricate lines that could be printed millions of times without losing detail. If you look closely at a crisp dollar bill, you can see the incredible complexity of his work, the subtle shading on Washington's face, the texture of his hair, the very glint in his eye. It is a testament to Burt's artistry that this engraving has remained the standard for over 150 years. So, why Washington? Why was his image chosen to be the face of the nation's most common currency? The answer lies in what he represented to the American people, both during his time and 4 generations to follow. By the time this design was standardized, the United States had been through turbulent times, including the devastating Civil War. The country desperately needed symbols of unity and stability. George Washington was the perfect figure. He was the commander of the Continental Army who led the colonies to victory. He was the president of the Constitutional Convention, guiding the creation of the government. And, most importantly, he was the first president who voluntarily stepped down after 2 terms. setting a precedent for the peaceful transfer of power. He was, and is, the father of his country. His image wasn't just a nod to the past. It was a message about the nation's core values. Washington embodied leadership, integrity, and a commitment to the republic over personal gain. Placing his portrait on the dollar bill was a way of embedding these ideals into the very fabric of American daily life. Every time a person made a transaction, they were holding a reminder of the nation's founding principles. His calm gaze was meant to be reassuring, a symbol of continuity and strength through economic ups and downs, through political division, and through the constant change that defines a growing nation. He represented a unifying figure that all Americans, regardless of their background or political beliefs, could look up to. Think about the power of that symbolism. Money is often seen as transactional, even divisive, but by featuring Washington, the currency was elevated. It became a piece of national identity. His presence on the bill suggested that the nation's economy was built on the same solid foundation of principles that he himself had championed. It was a promise of stability and a connection to the enduring spirit of the American experiment. In a world of constant flux, Washington's portrait is a steady anchor, a familiar face representing the enduring promise of the United States. It is truly fascinating how an object as common as a dollar bill can hold so many layers of history, art, and meaning. The portrait of Washington is more than just decoration. It's a deliberate choice, a powerful symbol of unity, continuity, and the foundational ideals of the United States. The collaboration between a painter like Gilbert Stuart and an engraver like Charles Burke gave us this iconic image that has stood the test of time, reminding us of where the nation came from and the principles it strives to uphold. Next time you have a dollar bill in your hand, take a moment to really look at it. Appreciate the intricate engraving and consider the legacy of the man staring back at you. It's a small masterpiece that connects us all to a larger national story. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration today. If you found this interesting, please give this video a thumbs up, and do forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next chapter. We have plenty more secrets to uncover. Until next time, stay curious. Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of currency. Today, we're exploring Chapter 6, the artistic design. We'll be taking a close look at the beautiful and complex details that make banknotes not just money, but miniature works of art. Have you ever really paused to appreciate the intricate designs on a dollar bill? Well, today, we're going to do just that. Let's start with the borders. They aren't just pretty frames. They're the first line of defense against counterfeiting. Look at the fine lines, the swirling patterns, the almost microscopic details. These are created using a special engraving technique that is incredibly difficult to replicate. The precision required is immense. Each line has a purpose, weaving together to form a complex web of security and artistry. Think of it like a signature, unique to the artist and the printing press. This level of detail was a huge challenge for counterfeiters back in the day. And even with modern technology, getting it exactly right is nearly impossible. This technique is called fine line engraving, and it's a true craft. Artists would spend hundreds of hours carving these designs into steel plates. The process, known as intaglio printing, leaves a raised ink on the paper, giving it that distinct, tactile feel. Run your finger over an older bill, and you can actually feel the texture of the ink. That's the mark of genuine currency. The pressure of the press forces the paper into the engraved lines of the plate, creating a three-dimensional quality that a simple photocopier just can't reproduce. Now, let's zoom in on the intricate patterns, often called guilloche patterns. These are those mesmerizing, geometric designs that look like they were made with a These patterns are generated by a machine called a Rose engine lathe, which creates complex, repetitive designs that are mathematically precise. The beauty of these patterns is that any slight imperfection or deviation, which is almost guaranteed in a counterfeit, would be immediately obvious to a trained eye. It's a brilliant fusion of mechanics and art, creating a visual fingerprint that is both beautiful and secure. And what about the seals? The Treasury seal, the Federal Reserve seal. They're more than just official stamps. They are packed with symbolism and, you guessed it, more security features. The sawtooth points on the Treasury seal, for instance, are uniform and sharp. On a fake bill, they often look uneven or blurry. The seals are printed with a specific color and clarity that's hard to match. They represent the authority and authenticity of the currency, a government's promise that this piece of paper holds value. Each element, from the scales of justice to the key, tells a part of the story of our nation's financial system. Let's not forget the iconic national currency heading you see on many classic notes. This bold, often ornate lettering wasn't just a label. It was a declaration. The style of the font, the flourishes, and its placement were all part of the overall design aesthetic. It immediately identified the note's purpose and origin. These headings were often engraved with the same care as the portraits and vignettes, featuring shadowing and fine details within the letters themselves. They contribute to the note's personality and its historical context, anchoring it in a specific era of American finance. Beyond the main elements, there are countless hidden details. Look at the background of a portrait. What might seem like simple shading is often made up of micro-printing tiny letters or numbers that are invisible to the naked eye. You need a magnifying glass to see them. This was another genius way to trip up counterfeiters. Imagine trying to replicate text that is barely the width of a human hair using the technology of the 19th or early 20th century. It was an almost impossible task. These artistic choices weren't just for security. They were also a source of national pride. In an age before mass media, currency was one of the most widely distributed forms of government-produced art. It was a way to showcase the nation's artistic talent, technological prowess, and cultural identity. The images chosen, the presidents, the historical scenes, the allegorical figures all communicated a message about the country's values and history. A banknote was a pocket-sized ambassador for the nation. Every swirl, every line, every dot of ink has a story to tell. It's a testament to the incredible skill of the engravers, the designers, and the printers. They had to create something that was not only secure and functional, but also aesthetically pleasing. They had to balance complexity with clarity. Art wheat, A&T, counterfeiting technology. The result is a piece of ephemera that has captivated collectors and historians for generations. The more you look, the more you discover. So, the next time you have a bill in your hand, take a moment. Don't just see it as money. See it as a miniature museum of art and history. Appreciate the steady hand of the engraver, the clever mind of the designer, and the rich history embedded in its fibers. These designs are a beautiful reminder that even the most everyday objects can hold extraordinary secrets and incredible beauty. Thank you so much for joining me on this detailed tour of banknote artistry. I hope it's given you a new appreciation for the money in your wallet. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more chapters in our series. We love having you here. See you in the next video. Hello history buffs and currency collectors. Welcome back to our deep dive into the fascinating world of old banknotes. Today, in Chapter 7, we zeroing in on two of the most distinctive features of these historical treasures: the vivid red Treasury seal and the all-important serial numbers. If you've ever held an old bill and wondered what all those numbers and symbols mean, you're in the right place. Let's start with that eye-catching seal. On many notes from this era, you'll find a bold, vibrant red seal. This wasn't just for decoration. It was the official seal of the United States Treasury. Its bright color was a deliberate choice, making it stand out and adding a layer of security. It was a clear, visual guarantee from the government, a mark of authenticity that told the public this note was legitimate. Think of it as the Treasury's stamp of approval, printed right on the money. T's red seal, often with intricate designs like spikes or scalloped edges, became an iconic symbol of American currency for decades. It's one of the first things collectors look for, and its condition can greatly affect a note's value. A crisp, bright red seal is a beautiful sight to behold. Now, let's talk numbers. Every single one of these notes was a unique individual, and the serial numbers were its personal identification. Unlike today's bills where serial numbers are just sequential. The system back then was a bit more complex and a lot more interesting. You'll typically see two sets of numbers on these notes. First, there's the Treasury serial number. This number was printed by the Bureau of Engraving and Printing in Washington, D.C. It tracked the total number of notes of that specific type and series printed for all banks across the country. It was a national count, a way for the federal government to keep a master ledger of all the currency it was authorizing. So, if you see a high Treasury number, it means it was one of the later notes printed in that particular series. But here's where it gets really fascinating. The second number you'll find is the bank's own serial number. After the partially printed sheets of currency arrived from Washington, the local national bank had the responsibility of adding its own unique serial number to each bill. This number was specific to that bank alone. So, a bill with bank serial number 1 was literally the very first note issued by that specific bank for that denomination and series. Can you imagine the excitement of finding a number 1 note from your hometown bank? This dual numbering system created a direct link between the federal government and the local community bank. The red Treasury seal and its serial number represented federal oversight and backing. Willete Banka's serial number tied the note directly to the institution that was putting it into circulation. It was a tangible connection. Someone in a small town in Ohio could hold a bill and see not only the promise of the U.S. government, but also the name and number from the bank right on their own main street. This system is a dream for collectors. It allows us to trace a note's journey with incredible precision. You can have 2 notes with the exact same Treasury serial number, but because they went to different banks in different states, they will have completely different bank serial numbers and bank titles. It's like they have 2 different birth certificates. This is what makes collecting national banknotes so addictive. You aren't just collecting a piece of paper. You're collecting a specific piece of a specific town's financial history. For example, a collector might specialize in finding notes from a single state, or even a single county. Or maybe they try to find the lowest possible serial number from a particular bank. The possibilities are endless. The bank's serial number tells a local story, while the Treasury number tells a national one. Together, they paint a complete picture of how the nation's currency system worked. When you're examining one of these notes, pay close attention to the placement and style of these numbers. They were often applied with a different ink, and sometimes you can even see slight variations in alignment, which speaks to the manual or semi-automated processes used at the local bank level. It adds a human touch to what we often think of as a purely mechanical process. So, the next time you see an old bill, look for that brilliant red seal in the 2 sets of serial numbers. Understand that you're looking at a sophisticated system of identification. The red seal was the government's promise. The Treasury number was its national logbook entry. And the bank's serial number was its local identity, a unique marker tying it to a specific time and a specific place. It's this combination of national authority and local character that makes these notes so historically rich and compelling. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration of seals and serial numbers. It's these little details that truly bring history to life. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next chapter. We have plenty more stories to uncover. Until next time, happy collecting. Ever wondered if money could tell a story about where it's from? Not just the country, but the exact town or city. Well, for a fascinating period in American history, it did. Today, we re-diving into the incredible world of national banknotes and the ingenious system that made every single bill a unique piece of local and national history. Before the 1860s, the American banking system was, to put it mildly, a bit of a mess. Thousands of different banks issued their own currency. You could have a pocket full of cash, but the notes from a bank in another state might be worthless where you were. It was confusing, unstable, and a huge headache for commerce. The government needed a way to create a uniform, reliable currency that everyone could trust. The solution came during the Civil War with the National Banking Acts of 1863 and 1864. This legislation created a new system of national banks. These weren't government-owned banks in the way we might think today. Instead, they were privately owned banks that had to meet strict federal requirements to receive a national charter. Once they were chartered, they gained a special privilege: the ability to issue United States currency with their own name on it. This is where it gets really cool. Imagine you walk into the First National Bank of any town, USA. They wouldn't just hand you generic greenbacks. They would issue notes that were, in essence, a collaboration between them and the U.S. Treasury. The overall design, the portraits, the security features. All of that was standardized by the federal government. This ensured the money was accepted and trusted nationwide. It was all backed by U.S. government bonds that the bank had to deposit with the Treasury, making it incredibly secure. But here's the brilliant part. Each note was also a local artifact. Prominently displayed on the face of the bill was the name of the issuing bank, UDC, the First National Bank of Denver, or the Farmers and Merchants National Bank of Los Angeles. It was a direct link to a community, and right alongside the bank's name was its unique charter number, assigned by the government. This number was like the bank's fingerprint, a one-of-a-kind identifier in the national system. Think about what this meant. A single dollar bill was simultaneously a piece of national currency, spendable anywhere from Maine to California, and a miniature billboard for a local institution. It said, "This money is backed by the full faith and credit of the United States," and it was brought to you by your neighbors at the bank down the street. This dual identity was a stroke of genius. It fostered local pride and trust while building a powerful, unified national economy. Let's look at some of these notes up close. The designs are absolutely stunning, known as national banknotes. They came in various series and denominations over the years, from 1863 all the way up to 1935. The early notes, often called original series and series of 1875, are famous for their intricate engravings and historical vignettes. You might see scenes like the landing of Columbus or the baptism of Pocahontas, printed in beautiful detail. But the star of the show for collectors and historians is always the bank's title and location. You could have two notes of the same series and denomination, say a $10 bill from 1882, but one might be from the Chase National Bank of the City of New York, charter number 2370, and another from the First National Bank of Tombstone, Arizona, charter number 2515. Same value, same federal design, but two completely different stories. One represents the heart of American finance, while the other speaks to the rugged, frontier spirit of the Wild West. Collectors today go wild for these notes, and it's easy to see why. Collecting national banknotes isn't just about accumulating old money. It's about collecting pieces of local history. Some people try to collect a note from every state, while others might focus on their home county or a specific railroad line. There were over 12,000 national banks chartered over the life of the system, and many were in tiny, obscure towns. Finding a note from a small-town bank that only existed for a few years can be the holy grail for an immigrant. The amount of information you can glean from one of these bills is incredible. You have the bank's name, its town and state, and its charter number. But that's not all. The notes were also signed by two of the bank's officers, typically the president and the cashier. Below their names, ULL find the signatures of the Treasurer of the United States and the Register of the Treasury, representing the federal government's guarantee. It's a physical manifestation of the public-private partnership that defined the system. This system of localized national currency thrived for over 70 years. It financed America's westward expansion, its industrial revolution, and its rise as a global economic power. It provided a stable and flexible money supply that could grow with the country's needs. When a new town sprang up along a railroad line, its citizens could petition to form a national bank, and soon, money bearing the town's own name would be circulating in the local economy. So, what happened to this system? Why don't we have notes from the First National Bank of your town today? The Great Depression was the catalyst for change. The banking crisis of the early 1930s led to major financial reforms. In 1935, the federal government decided to phase out the issuance of national banknotes. The privilege of private banks to print their own versions of currency was revoked, and the U.S. moved toward a fully centralized currency system with the Federal Reserve notes we use today. While our modern currency is efficient and uniform, it's hard not to feel like something was lost. That tangible connection between our money and our local communities is gone. The national banknote era represents a unique chapter in American history. A time when your money told you not just what it was worth, but where it came from. Each bill was a testament to local enterprise and national unity, all woven together in a single piece of paper. Next time you see an old-timey bank building on a main street with First National Bank carved in stone above the door, take a moment to imagine a time when that very building was issuing its own currency, connecting that small town to the grand story of the nation's economy. Thank you so much. for joining me on this journey through banking history. I hope you found it as fascinating as I do. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and do not forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do not miss our next exploration into the amazing stories behind the money in our pockets. See you next time. Have you ever flipped over a $1 bill and really, truly looked at it? We often focus on George Washington on the front, but the back is where some of the most fascinating stories and intricate details are hidden. Today, we're diving deep into the green reverse side of the dollar, exploring why it's green, the incredible artistry involved, and the powerful symbolism that has defined it for generations. This isn't just paper, it's a canvas of American history and ideals. Let's start with the most obvious question. Why green? When the first national banknotes, called demand notes, were issued in 1861 to finance the Civil War, the government needed a way to prevent counterfeiting. Photography was still in its infancy, and color photography didn't exist. So, they chose a color that was difficult for early cameras to reproduce: green. The specific green ink was also abundant and durable. This practical choice led to the iconic nickname that has stuck ever since: the greenback. It became a symbol of stable, government-backed currencia, literal green tint of trust during a time of national crisis. Now, let's talk about the incredible artistry. The back of the dollar bill is a masterpiece of a technique called intaglio printing. This process involves engraving the design into a metal plate. Ink is applied to the plate, and then the surface is wiped clean, leaving ink only in the engraved grooves. When paper is pressed against the plate with immense pressure, it lifts the ink out, creating a slightly raised, textured feel that you can actually sense with your fingertips. This intricate, detailed printing method is extremely difficult to replicate, making it a powerful anti-counterfeiting measure. The fine lines you see in the shading, the crispness of the letterzette, is all a testament to the skill of the engravers at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. It's a form of security that's also beautiful. The centerpiece of the back design is, without a doubt, the word "one," printed in huge, bold letters. This isn't just for clarity. It's a design choice that makes the denomination immediately recognizable. But surrounding this central element are two of the most discussed symbols in American history: the two sides of the Great Seal of the United States. Let's break them down, starting with the one on the right, which is the more familiar side. This is the obverse, or front, of the Great Seal. At its center is the American bald eagle, our national bird. This isn't just any eagle. It's a symbol of strength, freedom, and majesty. In its right talon, the eagle clutches an olive branch with 13 leaves and 13 olives, representing the power to make peace. In its left talon, it holds a bundle of 13 arrows, symbolizing the power to make war. Notice that the eagle's head is turned towards the olive branch. This is a deliberate and powerful statement. America desires peace, but is always prepared to defend itself. Above the eagle's head, you'll find a constellation of 13 stars, representing the original 13 colonies, arranged in a way that forms a single, larger star. This symbolizes that out of many states, one new nation was formed. The banner held in the eagle's beak reads "A pluribus unum," the Latin phrase meaning "out of many, one." This motto reinforces the idea of a unified nation forged from diverse states and people. And on the eagle's chest is a shield, unsupported, signifying that Americans rely on their own virtue and strength. The shield has 13 vertical stripes, representing the states, joined by a horizontal blue bar that unites them all under the federal government. Every single element here is carefully chosen to tell the story of the United States. Now, let's shift our attention to the left side, to the reverse of the Great Seal, which is even more mysterious and symbolic. What you see is an unfinished pyramid. This pyramid has 13 steps, again representing the 13 original states. The fact that it's unfinished signifies that the nation is still growing and building, always striving for improvement. At the base of the pyramid, you'll find the Roman numerals MD, which translates to 1776, the year of the Declaration of Independence and the birth of the nation. Floating above the pyramid is the all-seeing eye, or the eye of providence, enclosed in a triangle. This is one of the most debated symbols. Historically, it represents divine guidance and the idea that a higher power is watching over the nation's endeavors. It's a symbol of divine blessing on the American experiment. Above the sigh is the Latin motto, and white, Seo, epit, which means He, God, has favored our undertakings. It suggests that the founding of the nation was divinely inspired and blessed. Below the pyramid, a scroll bears another Latimoto novaso duesi, iselu uemi. This phrase translates to a new order of the ages. It proclaims that the United States represents a new beginning in governance and human history, a democratic republic in a world then dominated by monarchies. Together, these symbols on the reverse of the Great Seal tell a story of optimism, divine favor, and the creation of a new, ever-evolving nation. So, when you put it all together, the back of the $1 bill is far more than just currency. It's a portable monument. The green ink is a legacy of security and trust from the Civil War. The intricate engraving is a fusion of art and anti-counterfeiting technology, and the Great Seal is a rich tapestry of symbols that tell the story of America's founding principles. Unity, the pursuit of peace, the readiness to defend freedom, the belief in growth and progress, and the hope for a divinely favored new order of the ages. The next time you have a dollar bill in your hand, take a moment to look at the back. Trace the fine lines, read the mottos, and think about the journey of the nation it represents. It's a small piece of paper that carries a massive weight of history, art, and meaning. It truly is the green tint of trust, a symbol of a nation's promise, printed for all the world to see. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the dollar bill. If you found this as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button, subscribe for more stories hidden in plain sight, and share this video with someone who might appreciate the artistry and symbolism of our everyday money. See you in the next video. Welcome back to our journey through the history of craftsmanship. Today, we're stepping into a world where art, science, and security intertwine. The Bureau of Engraving and Printing. We'll explore Chapter 10, focusing on how currency was once made, a process of incredible skill and precision. Let us uncover the secrets behind the paper and the ink that created the very money people carried in their pockets. Before a single line could be printed, the perfect canvas had to be created. This wasn't ordinary paper made from wood pulp. Instead, it was a special blend of cotton and linen fibers. Imagine the feel of your favorite, softest cotton shirt or a fine linen tablecloth. That's the foundation of historic currency paper. This combination gave the notes a unique texture and, more importantly, incredible durability. The bill needed to survive being folded, crumpled, passed from hand to hand, and even accidentally washed. The cotton and linen blend provided the strength to withstand this daily wear and tear, far better than simple wood pulp paper ever could. This special paper also had built-in security features. Tiny red and blue silk threads were distributed throughout the pulp during the manufacturing process. They weren't printed on top. They were embedded within the very fabric of the paper itself. If you were to hold an old bill up to the light, you might just see these delicate fibers scattered randomly. This was a simple yet brilliant way to deter counterfeiters. Replicating this process without the specialized machinery of the Bureau was nearly impossible, making these threads a subtle but effective first line of defense against forgery. Now, let's move on to the printing itself. The heart of this process was the engraved steel plate. This wasn't a simple photograph or a digital file. It was a masterpiece of human artistry and patience. An engraver, known as a siderographer, would spend hundreds, sometimes thousands, of hours meticulously carving the design into a soft steel plate. Every line of the portrait, every swirl in the intricate borders, every letter and number was hand-cut in reverse. The engraver used a tool called a burin, applying precise pressure to create lines of varying depth and width. Deeper cuts would hold more ink and produce darker, bolder lines on the final print. This technique, cahier intaglio, is what gave older currency its distinctive, almost three-dimensional feel. You can still feel it on modern currency. The death-at-raised texture is a direct descendant of this classic method. The level of detail was astonishing. The fine, cross-hatched lines on a president's coat or the delicate waves in their hair were you want. Just for decoration, they were another layer of security. The complexity of these engravings was so high that it was incredibly difficult for counterfeiters to replicate by hand. The engravers at the Bureau were the best in the world, and their work was a signature of authenticity. Once the master die was complete, it was heated and hardened. Then, it was used to transfer the design onto a printing plate, which would contain multiple copies of the bill's image, ready for the press. With the paper prepared and the plates engraved, it was time to bring them together. This happened on a hand-inked press. It was a physically demanding and highly skilled job. A press operator would start by carefully applying a thick, specially formulated ink over the entire surface of the engraved steel plate. They had to ensure the ink filled every single microscopic groove and line that the engraver had carved. Next came the crucial step of wiping. The operator would meticulously wipe the surface of the plate clean, leaving ink only in the recessed, engraved lines. This required a perfect touch. If they wiped too hard, they would pull ink out of the lines, resulting in a faint, incomplete print. If they didn't wipe enough, smudges would appear on the final bill. It was a delicate balance, learned through years of experience. The palm of the hand was often the final tool used to get the perfect, polished surface, leaving the ink sitting pristinely in the engraved patterns below. Once the plate was perfectly inked and wiped, a sheet of the damped cotton linen paper was laid on top. The press operator would then turn a large, heavy wheel, which rolled the plate and paper under immense pressure. This pressure was key. It forced the damp paper down into the engraved grooves, lifting the ink out and transferring the image onto the bill. This is what created that signature raised feel of intaglio printing. The ink wasn't just sitting on the surface, it was bonded with the paper fibers. Each sheet was printed one side at a time, allowed to dry, and then the process was repeated for the other side, requiring perfect alignment. Every single bill was a product of this hands-on, labor-intensive process. From the pulp of cotton and linen to the artist's steady hand-carving steel. And finally, the press operator's careful inking and wiping it was a symphony of craftsmanship. This method ensured not only the beauty and durability of the currency, but also its security. It was a system built on human skill, where every note was a small testament to the dedication and artistry of the people at the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. The next time you look at a piece of currency, take a moment to appreciate the incredible history of craftsmanship it represents. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the art of printing and paper. I hope you found it as fascinating as I do. If you enjoyed this look into the past, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more stories of forgotten craftsmanship. We'll see you in the next chapter. Have you ever held a dollar bill and wondered about its journey? Not just where it came from, but who held it before you? What stories could it tell? Today, we're re-diving deep into one of the most fascinating chapters of American currency history, the story of circulation and everyday use, specifically through the eyes of a single, humble dollar bill from a bygone era. Imagine this. A crisp, new silver certificate, fresh from the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. Its journey doesn't start in a bank vault, but in the hands of a railroad worker, his pay for a week of laying track across the vast American plains. His hands, calloused and strong, fold it carefully and place it in his pocket. That weekend, he heads into town. The dollar's first stop, a general store, a hub of community life. He buys a sack of flour and some candy for his kids. The shopkeeper, with a friendly nod, takes the dollar and places it in a simple wooden cash drawer. Now, the dollar story really begins. It's no longer just currency. It's a participant in the rhythm of daily life. The very next day, a farmer's wife comes into that same store. She's sold some eggs and butter, and she needs to buy thread and fabric to mend her family's clothes. The shopkeeper makes change, and our dollar bill finds its way into her worn leather purse. It travels with her back to the farm, rattling in a wagon along a dusty country road. For a few days, the dollar rests. Then, the farmer needs to buy seeds for the spring planting. He takes the dollar, along with a few others, and heads to the local seed supplier. The dollar is exchanged for a promise of future harvest, a symbol of hope and hard work. The seed merchant, in turn, uses that dollar to pay a delivery driver who brought a new shipment from the city. Think about the sheer variety of hands this single bill has passed through. The rough, soil-stained hands of the farmer, the nimble, needle-pricked fingers of his wife, the ink-stained thumb of the shopkeeper tallying his accounts, the greasy hands of a mechanic fixing a wagon wheel. Each person who touched it had their own dreams, their own struggles, their own small victories. Our dollar might have been used to buy a ticket for a traveling vaudeville show, bringing a moment of laughter and wonder to a small town. It could have been tucked into a collection plate at a church on Sunday morning, a small offering of faith. Perhaps it was sent in a letter back east, a son assuring his mother he was doing well in the bustling city of Chicago. It might have paid for a shave and a haircut at the local barber shop, a place where town gossip and political debates were as common as the snip of scissors. Let's follow another path. Imagine the dollar is used by the seed merchant to buy a train ticket. Now, our dollar is on the move, tucked into the wallet of a traveling salesman. It journeys from small towns to big cities, witnessing the changing landscape of America from a train car window. In a bustling city market, the salesman buys a hot meal from a street vendor. The dollar is now in the vendor's pocket, smelling faintly of roasted chestnuts and city smog. That evening, the vendor uses the dollar to buy a newspaper, catching up on the day's events. The newsboy, in turn, takes his earnings home to his family, living in a crowded tenement building. The dollar might help buy a loaf of bread, a precious addition to a meager dinner. It represents survival, the daily grind of city life for so many working-class families. This cycle repeats endlessly. Each transaction is a story. A seamstress buys a spool of thread. A dock worker buys a cup of coffee to ward off the morning chill. A child uses it to buy a toy boat, launching it into a puddle after a rainstorm. The dollar bill witnesses births, pays for medicine during illnesses, and buys flowers for a loved one. It is a silent observer of human experience, from the most mundane purchases to the most significant life events. As the years pass, the bill itself begins to show the signs of its long journey. The crisp paper becomes soft, almost fabric-like. It develops creases and folds, a unique map of every pocket and wallet it has ever lived in. A corner might be torn, a faint smudge of ink or grease might mar its surface. These aren't imperfections. They are battle scars. They are the physical evidence of its history, a testament to the thousands of transactions and human connections it has facilitated. Unlike a coin that can last for centuries, a paper dollar has a finite lifespan. Eventually, a well-traveled bill becomes too worn. A bank teller following procedure will deem it unfit for circulation. It gets bundled with other tired, old notes and sent back to the Treasury to be destroyed. Its physical journey is over, but is its story truly finished? Not at all. The value it represented, the goods and services it paid for, the lives it touched, that impact continues. The flour it bought nourished a family. The seeds it purchased grew into a crop that fed many. The train ticket it paid for connected people across great distances. The newspaper it bought spread information and ideas. So the next time you hold a dollar, whether it's old or new, take a moment. Think about its journey. It's more than just paper and ink. It's a tiny, tangible piece of our collective human story. A miniature time capsule that has passed through the hands of countless individuals, each with a life as rich and complex as your own. It's a reminder that we are all connected, part of a vast, intricate web of economic and social interaction, all linked by the humble, hard-working dollar. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through history. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden stories all around us. Let me know in the comments what you think a dollar in your pocket might have been used for before it got to you. See you in the next video. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our deep dive into the fascinating world of currency. Today, we're re-stepping back in time to 1877 to explore a topic that is just as relevant now as it was then. Security. How exactly did they protect money from counterfeiters over 140 years ago? Long before the age of holograms and digital watermarks. You might be surprised by how sophisticated their methods were. Let's journey back to the Gilded Age. The United States was growing rapidly, and with that growth came the ever-present threat of counterfeit currency. A fake bill could undermine public trust in crippled local economies. To combat these, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing employed a trio of ingenious techniques on the 1877 series banknotes, particularly the famous woodchopper $5 bill. These weren't just pretty designs. They were a fortress of security features. The first line of defense was a technique that still impresses experts today: microprinting. If you were to look at an original 1877 bill with a magnifying glass and, a powerful one, find incredibly tiny text hidden within the intricate patterns. For example, on some notes, the words United States of America were repeated in microscopic letters, forming what appeared to be a simple, decorative line to the naked eye. Imagine the skill required to engrave this by hand onto a steel plate. For a counterfeiter, replicating this level of detail with the technology of the time was next to impossible. It was a brilliant way to hide security in plain sight. Any blurriness or imperfection in these tiny letters was an immediate red flag that the bill was a fake. Next up, let's talk about the art of line engraving, also known as intaglio printing. This was the heart and soul of 19th century banknote security. Unlike modern flat printing, intaglio involves carving the design into a metal plate. This plate is then inked, and the paper is pressed onto it with immense pressure. The result is that the ink is slightly raised off the surface of the paper. You can actually feel the texture. Run your finger over an old bill, and you'll notice a distinct tactile quality, especially in the portrait and the large numerals. This process created images with unparalleled sharpness and depth. Look at the portrait on an 1877 bill. You can see individual strands of hair, the subtle shadows on the face, and the intricate web-like patterns in the background. This was known as engine turning, created with a geometric lathe machine that could produce complex, repeating patterns that were extremely difficult for a counterfeiter to copy by hand. A fake bill would often look flat and lifeless by comparison. The lines would be muddy, and the portrait would lack that crisp, three-dimensional feel. The tactile feedback and the visual clarity of intaglio printing were a powerful one-two punch against fraud. But the master printers of the era had another trick up their sleeves: color-shifting ink. Now, this isn't the same as the color-shifting ink we see on modern $20 bills, which changes hue dramatically when you tilt it. The 19th century version was more subtle but equally effective for its time. They used proprietary ink formulas with unique chemical compositions. Some of these inks had a subtle chromatic quality, meaning they might appear as a solid black from one angle but reveal undertones of green or brown when viewed in different lighting. Furthermore, the way the ink was applied was a security feature in itself. The black ink used for the main design and the green ink for the back of the bill were chemically distinct. This made it difficult for counterfeiters to perfectly match both the color and the chemical properties. Early counterfeit detection often involves simple chemical tests. A bank teller might place a small, discrete drop of a specific acid on the bill. A genuine bill's ink would react in a predictable way, or not at all, while a forgery's ink might smudge, dissolve, or change to a completely different color. It was a form of chemical watermarking, adding another layer of complexity that would-be criminals had to overcome. So, let's put it all together. Imagine you're a counterfeiter in 1877. To create a convincing fake, you would first need to replicate microscopic text without the aid of modern digital tools. Then, you'd have to master the art of hand engraving on steel to mimic the raised, sharp feel of intaglio printing and the complex patterns of the geometric lathe. Finally, you would need to reverse engineer the secret chemical formula of the government's ink to ensure it had the correct color and didn't fail a simple chemical spell. The sheer combination of these three features, microprinting, line engraving, and specialized inks, created a formidable barrier. It's a testament to the craftsmanship and ingenuity of the Bureau of Engraving and Printing. They weren't just printing money. They were engaged in a constant cat-and-mouse game with some of the cleverest criminals of their day. These 19th century security features laid the groundwork for the advanced anti-counterfeiting technologies we rely on today. They established the principle that the best security is layered, combining elements that are difficult to see, difficult to feel, and difficult to replicate. So, the next time you see a piece of 19th century currency in a museum or a collection, take a closer look. It's not just an old piece of paper. It's a marvel of security engineering, and a piece of history that tells a story of art, innovation, and the enduring fight to protect our money. It truly shows that the battle for financial security has been raging for centuries, fought with ink, steel, and incredible human skill. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the past. If you found this interesting, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind the money in our pockets. We'll see you in the next video. Welcome back to our series, where we dive deep into the fascinating world of currency. Today, in Chapter 13, we're exploring the collectability and rarity of a true American treasure, the 1877 $1 bill. Get ready, because this is a story of survival, value, and immense historical significance. So, what makes the 1877 $1 bill so special? To put it simply, very few have survived to the present day. These notes were printed during a pivotal time in American history, the Reconstruction era. Life was hard, and paper money was used heavily. Bills were folded, crumpled, passed from hand to hand, and wore out quickly. Unlike coins, which can endure centuries of circulation, paper money is fragile. Most of these $1877 were simply used until they fell apart, and were eventually returned to the Treasury to be destroyed. Think about it, how many pieces of paper from the 1870s do you have lying around? The answer is probably none, and that's precisely the point. The natural life cycle of paper currency meant that the vast majority of these notes were destined for destruction. Only a tiny fraction managed to escape this fate, making every surviving example an extraordinary anomaly. Because of this natural attrition, finding an 1877 $1 bill in the wild today is virtually impossible. Your chances of getting one in your change are zero. So where are they? The surviving population of these notes is incredibly small and is primarily housed in two types of places: prestigious museums and high-end private collections. Institutions like the Smithsonian or the American Numismatic Association's Money Museum hold some of the finest known examples, preserving them for their historical and cultural importance. They are treated not just as old money, but as historical artifacts that tell a story about America's economic past. The other major destination for these bills is the hands of serious, dedicated collectors. These are individuals who understand the notes' significance and are willing to invest substantial resources to acquire and preserve a piece of history. These notes rarely change hands, and when they do, it's often through major auction houses for significant sums of money. They are, in every sense of the word, a holy grail for collectors of U.S. currency. Now, let's talk about what determines the value of one of these rare survivors. It all comes down to three key factors: grading, condition, and collector demand. First, grading. Just like with coins, paper money is professionally graded by third-party services like PMG or PCG's Currency. They assign a numerical grade, typically on a scale of 1 to 70, which provides an objective assessment of the note's condition. This process is crucial because it standardizes the quality of the note and gives collectors confidence in what they rebuy. An expert will meticulously examine the paper for things like folds, tears, pinholes, stains, and overall paper quality. The grade is a direct reflection of how well the note has been preserved. This brings us to condition, which is what the grade is measuring. A note in good condition might have heavy folds, discoloration, and small tears, showing it lived a long, hard life in circulation. It's a survivor, but it wears its battle scars proudly. On the other end of the spectrum, you have uncirculated or gem-uncirculated notes. These are the superstars. An uncirculated 1877 $1 bill looks like it just came off the printing press. It has crisp paper, vibrant inks, and no folds whatsoever. Finding a note from the 1870s in this pristine condition is incredibly rare. The difference in value between a heavily circulated note and a crisp uncirculated example is astronomical. A lower-grade circulated note might be worth thousands of dollars, which is already impressive. But a high-grade uncirculated specimen, we're talking tens of thousands, or even potentially over $100,000, depending on its specific attribute, and I appeal. The condition is paramount. Every fold, every tiny blemish, every whisper of circulation dramatically impacts its value. Finally, we have collector demand. Even the rarest item is only valuable if someone wants it, and for the 1877 $1 bill, the demand is intense and unwavering. Why? Because it represents a perfect storm for collectors. It's a key issue from a classic, highly collected series of U.S. currency. It's visually appealing, with intricate designs that are a hallmark of 19th century engraving, and its sheer rarity creates a sense of competition and prestige. Owning An 1877 $1 bill is a badge of honor in the numismatic community. It's a centerpiece for any serious collection. This constant high demand from a passionate collector base ensures that the value of these notes remains strong. When one does become available at auction, it generates a huge amount of buzz and fierce bidding. Collectors know how infrequently these opportunities arise, and they are prepared to act. It's this powerful combination of extreme rarity, historical importance, and intense collector desire that makes the 1877 $1 bill one of the most sought-after and valuable notes in all of American currency. So, to wrap up Chapter 13, the 1877 $1 bill is far more than just old money. It's a rare artifact, a survivor against all odds. Its journey from a common tool of commerce to a prized museum piece is a testament to its fragility and historical significance. The tiny number of surviving examples, combined with a rigorous grading system and incredibly high collector demand, has cemented its status as a numismatic legend. The next time you see a picture of one, remember the incredible story of survival it represents. It's a tangible link to our nation's past, preserved for us to admire today. Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive into the collectability of the 1877 $1 bill. I hope you found it as fascinating as I do. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel for more explorations into the world of rare currency. We have plenty more history to uncover together. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next chapter. Welcome back to our channel. In today's deep dive, we're tackling the big question, the one everyone eventually asks. How much is it worth? This is Chapter 14 of Orsidius, where we finally put a price tag on these fascinating pieces of history. So, let's get right into the value of these incredible notes today. The short answer is, it varies a lot. The market for these items is dynamic and depends on several key factors. We're talking about a range that can go from a few $100s for more common, circulated examples, all the way up to several thousand, and sometimes even tens of thousands, for the rarest and most pristine specimens. It's a vast landscape. But don't worry, we're going to break it down. First and foremost, let's talk about condition. In the world of collectibles, condition is king. It's the single most important factor determining value. Collectors use a standardized grading system. Typically on a scale from 1 to 70, a note graded as good or very good has seen significant circulation. It will have heavy folds, soiling, and possibly some small tears or pin. These notes are the most accessible entry points for new collectors and might trade for, let's say, $100 to $300, depending on other factors. As we move up the scale, we get into fine and very fine grades. These notes have seen less circulation. The paper is still relatively crisp. The colors are stronger, and the folds are fewer and less severe. Here, the value starts to climb noticeably. You might be looking at a range of $400 to $800. The visual appeal is much greater, and they represent a solid middle ground for serious collectors. Then we enter the higher echelons. Extremely fine, about uncirculated, and the Holy Grail, crisp and about uncirculated note might have just a single, light fold, or some minor handling marks that keep it from perfection. These can easily fetch over $1,000. A crisp, uncirculated note is a perfect specimen. It looks as though it just left the printing press. No folds, no bends, no blend. The paper is bright, the ink is sharp, and the embossing is prominent. For these, the sky is often the limit, with prices pushing well into the thousands. The difference in value between an about uncirculated note and a crisp uncirculated one can be double or even triple. Condition makes all the difference. Next up, let's discuss the seal type. This is another crucial piece of the puzzle. Over the years, the design of the Treasury seal on these notes changed. The most common ones you'll see are the blue seals, which were used on silver certificates. But there are also red seals for United States notes, brown seals for national banknotes issued in Hawaii during World War II, and even gold seals for gold certificates. Generally speaking, red seal notes tend to be a bit scarcer than their blue seal counterparts from the same series and denomination, often carrying a premium. A common-day blue seal in a mid-range grade might be worth $200, while the equivalent red seal could command $300 or more. The really interesting ones are the gold seals. Gold certificates were recalled in 1933, and most were destroyed. The few that survived are exceptionally rare and valuable. A gold certificate in any condition is a significant find, with even heavily circulated examples starting in the high hundreds and quickly escalating into the thousands of dollars. Then you have the brown seals. The Hawaii overprint notes have a fascinating history, created as an emergency measure. Their unique story adds to their appeal, and they carry a solid premium over standard notes of the same era. A brown seal note often starts around the $150 mark for a circulated example and goes up from there. The specific seal type tells a story, and collectors are willing to pay for that piece of history. Our third major value driver is the issuing bank. This applies specifically to national banknotes from 1863 to 1935. Thousands of individual national banks across the country were chartered to issue their own currency, all backed by U.S. bonds. The name of the bank and its town and state are printed right on the note. This creates an entirely separate dimension of collecting. The value here is driven by rarity. Notes from large, metropolitan banks in cities like New York, Chicago, or Philadelphia are relatively common. There were many in circulation, and a lot of them survived. A note from a major New York City bank might be one of the more affordable entry points into national banknotes. However, a note from a small, rural bank in a sparsely populated state like Wyoming, Nevada, or Alaska could be incredibly rare. Some of these small-town banks only issued a tiny amount of currency, and very few examples are known to exist today. A collector, trying to acquire one note from every bank in their home state, might pay a huge premium for a note from that one elusive, tiny town. It's not uncommon for a note from a rare bank to be worth 10 or even 20 times more than an identical note from a common bank, even in the same condition. Tracking auction records for specific bank charters is the only way to get a true sense of these values, and some can easily soar into the 5-figure range. So, let's put it all together with a few examples. Imagine you have a 1928 Series $1 silver certificate with a blue seal. If it's heavily circulated, folded, and worn, it might be worth around $20 to $40. If that same note is in crisp, uncirculated condition, its value could jump to $150 or more. Now, let's take a $10 national banknote from the same era. If it's from a common bank in Chicago and in very fine condition, it might be a $150 note. Let's do one more. A 1928 $5 United States note with a red seal. In a circulated fine grade, it might fetch around $75. In crisp, uncirculated condition, that price could easily climb to $500 or higher. The combination of condition, seal, and issuing bank creates a complex matrix of values. So, how can you determine the value of what you have? The best resources are recent auction results and specialized price guides. Websites for major auction houses like Heritage Auctions or Stax, Bowers are invaluable. You can search their archives for free to see what notes similar to yours have actually sold for. This is real-world data, and it's the most accurate measure of the current market. There are also printed guides, like the Whitman Red Book, which provide a good general overview of retail prices. Remember, the market is always in motion. What was valuable yesterday might be even more valuable today, or it might have cooled off. Staying informed by following auctions and connecting with the collector community is the best way to keep your finger on the pulse. The value isn't just a number. It's a reflection of rarity, history, and demand. Thank you so much for joining me for this chapter on value. I hope this overview has given you a clearer picture of how these amazing items are priced. It's a fascinating market, and understanding these key factors is the first step to becoming a savvy collector. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into the world of collecting. Hit that notification bell so you won't miss our next chapter. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. We've reached the final chapter of our journey, and it's time to ask the big question. Why does all of this matter? Why have we spent so much time looking at these old pieces of paper? The answer, I believe, is that these notes are so much more than just money. They are time capsules, works of art, and powerful symbols that tell the story of America itself. Think about it. When you hold an old banknote, you're not just holding a certain dollar value. You're holding a piece of history. This note could have been in the pocket of a soldier, a farmer, an immigrant, stepping off a boat with dreams of a new life. It could have been used to buy a family's first home, start a business, or simply put food on the table during tough times. Each fold, each faint crease, is a silent witness to countless moments in our nation's past. These notes have passed through the hands of generations, connecting us directly to the people who built the world we live in today. They are tangible relics of a bygone era, more personal and immediate than any textbook. And let's talk about the art. We've seen some breathtaking designs in this series: the intricate engravings, the majestic portraits, the stunning vignettes depicting everything from pioneers taming the frontier to the marvels of modern technology. These aren't just anti-counterfeiting measures. They are deliberate, artistic choices. The Bureau of Engraving and Printing employed some of the finest artists and engravers of their time. They were tasked with creating a visual identity for the nation's currency, one that would inspire pride and confidence. The result is a miniature art gallery that fits in your wallet. The educational series of 1896, for example, is widely considered one of the most beautiful sets of currency ever produced anywhere in the world. These notes are masterpieces of line work, composition, and symbolic storytelling. To dismiss them as just money is to overlook a rich and accessible form of American art. Beyond the history and the art, these notes represent something even more profound: trust. What is money, really? At its core, it's a shared belief. It only has value because we all agree that it does. Every time a person accepted a dollar bill, they were placing their faith in the stability and integrity of the United States. This piece of paper was a promise from the government, a symbol of the full faith and credit of the nation. Think back to the chaotic eras of banking before the federal system was solidified. You had thousands of different notes from private banks, some trustworthy, some not. The creation of a unified national currency was a monumental step. It helped knit the country together, creating a common economic language and fostering a sense of shared national identity. When you look at a Federal Reserve note, you're looking at the culmination of that long struggle for a stable and reliable financial system. It's a symbol of economic unity and the promise of a government to its people. That promise is the bedrock of our entire economy. This trust is woven into the very fabric of the notes. The portraits chosen are of leaders who shaped the nation: Washington, Lincoln, Hamilton. They weren't just famous figures. They were symbols of integrity, leadership, and the enduring principles of the Republic. The buildings depicted, like the White House and the Lincoln Memorial, are not just landmarks. They are monuments to our democratic ideals. The Great Seal of the United States, with its eagle and its mottos, E pluribus, unum ad many. One speaks to the very essence of the American experiment. All these elements work together to reinforce the message that this currency is backed by the strength and honor of the nation. Even the evolution of the designs tells a story. We see the nation's values and priorities shift over time. Early notes often celebrated agriculture and westward expansion. Later, they began to feature industry and invention. The security features themselves tell a story of an ongoing battle between innovation and deception. A high-stakes cat-and-mouse game that reflects the technological advancements of each era. From the simple watermarks of the past to the complex color-shifting inks and 3D security ribbons of today, the currency is a living document of our technological progress. So, when you happen to come across an older bill in your change, take a moment before you spend it. Look at it closely. Consider the journey it has taken to reach you. Think about the artist who engraved the portrait, the historical events it has silently witnessed, and the immense system of trust that gives it meaning. These notes are far more than their face value. They are miniature monuments to American history, art, and the enduring promise of a stable union. They are a part of our collective heritage, a story told on paper and ink, passed from one hand to the next. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible exploration of our nation's currency. It's been a privilege to share this passion with you. If you've enjoyed this journey as much as I have, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It really helps us continue to create content like this for everyone to enjoy. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Have you ever looked at a banknote? I mean asterisk. Really asterisk. Looked at it and wondered, who made this? We often focus on the historical figures depicted, but today we're pulling back the curtain on the unsung heroes of currency. The engravers, printers, and designers. Welcome to our deep dive into the artists behind the bill, a tribute to the masters whose intricate work defined the golden age of banknote art in the 19th century. Imagine a world without digital design software, where every line, every scroll, every delicate portrait was painstakingly carved by hand into a steel plate. In reverse, this was the world of artists like Charles Burt and James Smiley, titans of their craft, whose genius is literally in our hands. Yet their names are largely forgotten by history. Their workshop wasn't a sunlit studio with canvases, but a space filled with the smell of ink, the glint of steel, and the intense focus of a master at work. Let's start with Charles Burt. Born in Scotland, Burt became one of America's most celebrated engravers. His specialty, portraits. Portraits, the ability to capture not just a likeness, but the very character and soul of a person, using only a fine-pointed tool called a burin, is nothing short of miraculous. When you see the lifelike eyes of a historical figure on a 19th century note, there's a good chance you're looking at the handiwork of Burt. He had this incredible talent for translating a painting into a series of lines and dots that, when printed, created a sense of depth, texture, and light. It's a form of artistic alchemy, transforming a flat piece of paper into a window to the past. Then there was James Smiley, another Scottish-born artist who made his name in America. While Burt was a master of the human face, Smiley was a virtuoso of the vignettos, small, intricate scenes that often adorned the borders and backs of bank. Think majestic landscapes, bustling cityscapes, or allegorical figures representing concepts like liberty or industry. Smiley was a master of landscape engraving. He could create sprawling, atmospheric scenes in a space no bigger than a postage stamp. His work transported you. One moment you're holding a piece of currency, the next you standing on a mountaintop, overlooking a pristine American wilderness or witnessing the construction of a great new railroad. He wasn't just decorating the money, he was embedding the story of a nation, its aspirations, and its identity, right into the fabric of its economy. But it wasn't just about individual brilliance. Creating a banknote was a collaborative symphony of skill. First, a designer would sketch out the overall concept, deciding where the portraits, vignettes, and texts would go. This was like the blueprint for a masterpiece. They had to balance security with artistry, creating a design that was both beautiful and incredibly difficult to counterfeit. Every element had a purpose. The complex geometric patterns, known as guilloche, weren't just for decoration. They were a formidable barrier against forgers. Once the design was approved, it was handed over to a team of specialized engravers. It was like an artistic assembly line. One artist, like Burt, would engrave the main portrait. Another, like Smiley, would handle the landscape vignette. A third, known as a script engraver, would meticulously carve the letters and numbers with perfect, flowing grace. Each was a master of their domain. The level of detail is staggering. We're talking about lines thinner than a human hair, all carved by hand with unwavering precision. A single slip of the tool could ruin weeks of work. After all the individual elements were engraved onto separate steel plates, the magic of transfer printing began. The images were transferred from these small, individual dies onto a single, large printing plate. This process itself was an art form, ensuring every detail was perfectly preserved and aligned. Finally, this master plate would be used to print thousands upon thousands of sheets of bank. The printers were the final artists in this chain, ensuring the right amount of ink, the perfect pressure, and the consistent quality that brought the engraver's vision to life. The companies they worked for, like the American Banknote Company and the National Banknote Company, became world-renowned centers of excellence for this kind of security printing. They were the Silicon Valleys of their day, attracting the best artistic and technical talent from around the globe. They didn't just print money. They created miniature works of art that projected an image of stability, prosperity, and national pride. In an era of frequent bank failures, a beautifully and intricately engraved note was a sign of a bank's legitimacy. It told the public, "We are solid. We are trustworthy." Art became a form of security. So why do we not know more about these incredible artists? Part of it is the nature of their work. They were commercial artists, working for a company, their names often absent from the final product. Unlike painters or sculptors who signed their work with a flourish, the engraver's signature was the perfection of the line itself. Their legacy wasn't in a gallery, but in the pockets and wallets of millions of ordinary people. The next time you come across a vintage banknote, perhaps in a museum or a collector's shop, take a moment, use a magnifying glass if you have one, trace the lines of the portrait, get lost in the details of the vignette, and admire the perfect lettering. You're not just looking at old money, you're looking at the culmination of immense talent, patience, and artistry. You're holding a testament to Charles Burt, James Smiley, and the countless other anonymous engravers, designers, and printers who, line by line, etched the face of a nation. They were the unsung masters, the artists behind the bill, and their incredible work deserves to be seen, appreciated, and remembered. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the world of banknote art. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time. Have you ever really looked at a dollar bill? It's more than just money. It's a piece of history, a tiny canvas that tells a story of a nation's evolution. Today we're going on a fascinating journey through time, exploring how the humble $1 note has transformed. Welcome to Chapter 17, The Evolution of the Dollar. Let's start our journey way back in 1877. Imagine holding one of these notes, te weri yuge, much larger than the bills in your wallet today, earning them the nickname horse blankets. The 1877 $1 United States note is a work of art. On the left, you'd see a beautiful, intricate vignette called Columbus Discovering Land. It's this grand, almost cinematic scene, full of detail and drama. The portrait on the right, that's George Washington, looking stoic and formal, based on a famous painting by Gilbert Stuart. The overall design feels very ornate, very Victorian. Look at the complex laid work, the swirling patterns called gil. This wasn't just for decoration. It was a cutting-edge anti-counterfeiting feature for its time. The printing technology was based on engraving, where skilled artisans would meticulously carve the design into a metal plate by hand. This process gave the notes an incredible depth and texture, a certain gravitas that's hard to replicate. The back was just as elaborate, featuring a large X, and the word one interwoven with complex geometric patterns. It was designed to be impressive, to project an image of a strong, stable nation still finding its footing after the Civil War. It's a testament to the artistry and craftsmanship of the era. Now, let us fast forward a few decades to 1923. We were still in the era of large-sized notes, but things are starting to change. This is the last of the big bills, and it's a real beauty. It's often called the porthole note by collectors, and you can see why. George Washington is still front and center, but now he's framed in a prominent, almost porthole-like oval. The Columbus vignette is gone. The design has been simplified, cleaned up. The overall aesthetic feels less cluttered, more focused. The frilly, Victorian flourishes of the 1877 note have given way to a slightly more modern, streamlined look. The one on the front is bold and clear. On the back, you'll find a stunning design dominated by the Great Seal of the United States. This was a significant shift, placing national symbolism at the core of the design. The technology was still rooted in engraving, but the techniques had been refined. The lines are cleaner, the printing more consistent. This 1923 note represents a bridge between two worlds, the ornate past and the standardized future. It's like the final, grand performance of the large-sized note before a major change was about to sweep the nation's currency. It's elegant, balanced, and a favorite among collectors for its clean, iconic design. Then comes the big revolution, 1928. This is the year everything changes. The government decided that large-sized notes were too cumbersome and expensive to produce. So they introduced the small-sized notes that are the same size we use today. This was a massive shift, driven by practicality and efficiency. When you compare the 1928 small-size $1 silver certificate to its predecessors, the difference is stark. The design is much, much simpler. Washington's portrait, still based on the same Gilbert Stuart painting, remains the central feature, but the elaborate frames and vignettes are gone. He is now flanked by a blue Treasury seal on the right and the number 1 on the left. The fancy scrollwork is significantly reduced. This design was all about standardization. The goal was to create a uniform look across all denominations, making the currency easier for the public to recognize and for the government to produce en masse. The back of the 1928 note is also very simple, featuring a large, stylized one in the center. The Great Seal, which was so prominent on the 1923 note, wouldn't appear on the back of the $1 bill until 1935. So, what does this evolution tell us? It's a story of changing tastes, advancing technology, and shifting national priorities. We moved from the 1877 note to S, focus on historical narrative and artisanal complexity, reflection of a nation, celebrating its story and craft too. The 1923 note S, balanced symbolic elegance. Finally, we arrived at the 1928 series, born out of a need for economic efficiency and modern practicality. The artistic flourishes of the 19th century gave way to the clean, functional design principles of the 20th. The move to smaller notes wasn't just a change in size. It was a change in philosophy. It signaled a move toward mass production and a more utilitarian approach to currency. The printing process became more mechanized, allowing for faster and cheaper production to meet the demands of a growing economy. Think of it like the evolution of architecture, from ornate Victorian mansions to the clean lines of modern skyscrapers. Each design reflects the spirit of its time. The horse blanket notes are relics of a bygone era, beautiful but impractical. The small-size notes are the workhorses of a modern, fast-paced economy. By laying these 3 notes side by side, 1977, 1923, and 1928, we can literally see history unfolding. We see the shift from art to utility, from intricate hand craftsmanship to streamlined mass production. The dollar in your pocket today is a direct descendant of that 1928 revolution. While it has seen its own changes, like the addition of the Great Seal and modern security features, its fundamental design DNA was cast back then. It is a powerful reminder that even the most common objects we handle every day have a rich and fascinating story to tell. They are a reflection of who we were, who we are, and the journey we took to get here. Next time you pull out a dollar, take a closer look. You're not just holding money, you're holding a piece of American history. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the evolution of the dollar. I hope you found it as fascinating as I do. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And you wouldn't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious. Hello, and welcome back to our journey through the fascinating world of currency. Today, we're diving into Chapter 18, a topic that's crucial for every collector. Whether you're just starting out or have been at it for years, the preservation and care of old currency. These aren't just pieces of paper. They are tangible links to our past, fragile storytellers that deserve our utmost respect and attention. How we handle and store them today determines whether they will survive to tell their stories to future generations. So, let's explore the art and science of protecting these historical treasures. First things first, let's talk about the #1 rule of handling old banknotes. Less is more. Every time you touch a note, you risk transferring oils, dirt, and acids from your skin, which can cause irreversible damage over time. When you do need to handle your collection, make sure your hands are freshly washed and thoroughly dried. For particularly rare or fragile notes, many serious collectors will even use soft, lint-free cotton gloves. Handle them by the edges, gently and with purpose. The goal is to minimize physical contact as much as possible. It might feel a bit overly cautious at first, but this simple habit is the foundation of good preservation. Now, where do you put these precious items after you've handled them with such care? The answer is not in an old shoebox or a regular paper envelope. These materials often contain acids that will leach into your banknotes, causing them to yellow, become brittle, and deteriorate over time. The gold standard for currency storage is using archival quality sleeves or holders. Look for products that are specifically labeled as acid-free, archival safe, and made from materials like polyester or inert polypropylene. These materials create a stable, non-reactive barrier that protects the note from environmental contaminants, fingerprints, and accidental spills. They come in various sizes, so you can find the perfect fit for each note in your collection. When you place a note into a sleeve, do it carefully. Don't force it in. Gently guide it, ensuring the edges don't get snagged or folded. For many collectors, the clear, crisp look of a note in a high-quality mylar sleeve is a joy in itself. It allows you to view both sides of the banknote without ever having to touch the paper itself. For added protection, you can then organize these sleeved notes into archival safe albums or storage boxes. This not only keeps them organized, but also adds another layer of defense against physical damage, like bending or creasing. It's about creating a safe little home for each piece of history. Let's move on to the invisible enemies of your collection. The environment. One of the most destructive forces is light, specifically ultraviolet UV light. Sunlight and even some types of indoor lighting can fade the inks on a banknote. With surprising speed, think of it like a photograph left on a sunny windowsill. The vibrant colors will wash out and become dull. This damage is permanent. So, rule number 2 is to keep your collection out of direct sunlight. Store your albums or boxers in a dark place, like a closet, a drawer, or a safe. If you want to display a particularly special note, consider using UV filtering glass or acrylic in the frame, but Abington limit its exposure to bright light. The best way to enjoy your collection is to take it out and view it, then return it to its safe, dark storage spot. Alongside light, we have to talk about temperature and humidity. These two factors work together and can be incredibly damaging. High humidity is a major problem. It can promote the growth of mold and mildew, which can stain and eat away at the paper fibers. It can also cause the notes to feel limp and can even make the paper stick to the inside of its holder. On the other hand, an environment that is too dry can make the paper brittle and prone to cracking. The ideal environment for paper is a stable one. Most experts recommend a relative humidity of around 45 to 55% and a consistent, cool temperature. Avoid storing your collection in places with wild fluctuations, like attics, basements, or garages. These areas are notorious for their dampness and temperature swings. A climate-controlled room in your main living space is the best option. You can even purchase a small, inexpensive device called a hygrometer to monitor the humidity levels in your storage area. Another aspect of care is being mindful of what's around your collection. Avoid storing banknotes near chemicals, cleaning supplies, or anything with a strong odor. Fumes can be absorbed by the paper and cause damage. Also, be wary of pests. Insects and rodents can do devastating damage to a paper collection. Storing your notes in sturdy, archival boxers provides a good line of defense. It's all about creating a clean, stable, and secure environment. Think of yourself as the curator of your own private museum. Your job is to ensure that the artifacts under your care are protected from all potential threats, both visible and invisible. Let's quickly recap the key principles. First, handle with care and cleanliness. Wash your hands, or better yet, use cotton gloves. Second, use the right materials. Invest in acid-free, archival quality sleeves and albums. Third, control the environment. Keep your collection away from light, especially sunlight, and maintain a stable, cool temperature with moderate humidity. Avoid basements and attics. By following these guidelines, you're not just storing old paper, you're acting as a guardian of history. You are preserving the stories, the art, and the economic heritage that these notes represent. Caring for your collection is a mindful and rewarding process. It deepens your connection to each item and ensures that the joy and knowledge they bring can be passed down. It's a responsibility we take on as collectors, and doing it right is a sign of true passion for the hobby. Thank you for joining me for this important chapter. I hope these tips help you protect your treasures for many years to come. If you found this helpful, please give this video a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more insights into the world of currency. We'll see you in the next chapter. Happy collecting. Have you ever looked at a dollar bill and wondered about the stories it could tell? It's more than just paper and ink. It's a powerful symbol, especially in the years following one of the most divisive periods in American history, the Civil War. Let us journey back in time to understand how this simple piece of currency became a profound emblem of faith and unity. After the cannons fell silent and the smoke of battle cleared, the United States was a nation deeply wounded. The conflict had torn families, communities, and the very fabric of the country apart. Rebuilding wasn't just about constructing new buildings or repairing railroads. It was about mending a fractured national identity and restoring trust in the idea of a united country. This is where the money comes in, playing a role you might not expect. Before the Civil War, the banking system was a chaotic patchwork. Most paper money was issued by private, state-chartered banks. A note from a bank in Ohio might be worthless in New York, and its value could fluctuate wildly from one day to the next. There was no single, reliable national currency. This financial fragmentation mirrored the political divisions of the era. Each state had its own economic interests, and the lack of a unified currency only amplified these differences. Then, in the midst of the war, the National Banking Acts of 1863 and 1864 were passed. This was a revolutionary step. For the first time, the federal government established a system of national banks. These banks were authorized to issue banknotes that were backed by U.S. government bonds. And on these new notes, one word stood out, printed boldly for all to see: national. Think about the power of that single word. In that specific moment, in a country that had just fought a brutal war over the very concept of a federal union, labeling the currency national was a deliberate and powerful statement. It wasn't just a United States note. It was a national banknote. This wasn't just money from a bank in Boston or Charleston. It was money from the nation. Every time a person held one of these bills, they were holding a tangible piece of the Union's victory and its promise of a restored, unified country. It was a constant, everyday reminder that they were part of something larger than their individual state. The word national was a declaration of faith that the Union would endure, that the sacrifices of the war had not been in vain, and that a single, unified nation was not just a temporary arrangement, but a permanent reality. For a soldier returning home to the South, or a merchant in the West, or a factory worker in the North, this new currency represented a shared identity. It was a piece of the federal government you could literally put in your pocket. It symbolized a promise of stability and a connection to the entire country. When you used a national banknote to buy goods, you were participating in a national economy, reinforcing the very bonds that the war had threatened to sever forever. Beyond the powerful symbolism of its name, the national dollar itself became a practical force for unity. As these standardized notes spread across the country, they began to weave the disparate state economies into a single, cohesive whole. A farmer in Iowa could now be certain that the money he received for his crops would be accepted at face value by a manufacturer in Pennsylvania. This reliability greased the wheels of interstate commerce. Trade between states became easier, more predictable, and more profitable. A merchant in California no longer had to consult a long list of discounted banknotes to figure out what a bill from Maine was actually worth. The dollar was the dollar, from the Atlantic to the Pacific. This economic integration was crucial for national healing. When people trade with each other, they interact, they build relationships, and they develop a sense of shared interest. The national currency was the medium for these interactions. Imagine the psychological impact. Before, your financial world was largely local or regional. Now, the money in your hand was a passport to a national marketplace. It physically connected you to people and places you might never visit. It fostered a sense of economic citizenship, a feeling that everyone, regardless of their state, was participating in the same grand economic project: the building of a prosperous American nation. The dollar became a common language of commerce that everyone could understand and trust. This process didn't happen overnight, of course. It took time for the old state banknotes to fade away and for the national currency to become universally accepted. But with each transaction, with every wage paid and every good purchased with a national banknote, the idea of a single, unified nation was reinforced. The dollar bill became more than just a medium of exchange. It became an instrument of national cohesion. It stitched the country back together, one transaction at a time. The economic unity it fostered helped to pave the way for a renewed political and social unity. By creating a shared economic space, the national currency helped people to see beyond their local and state identities and to embrace their common identity as Americans. It was a silent but persistent force, working in the pockets and purses of millions to rebuild the very idea of the United States. So, the next time you hold a dollar, take a moment to appreciate its hidden history. It's not just a piece of paper that buys you a cup of coffee. It is a descendant of a currency that was born out of conflict and designed as a tool for peace and reunification. It carries the legacy of a nation's profound act of faith in itself, I believed. Despite its deepest divisions, it could come together and forge a single, indivisible identity. That simple bill is a symbol of a promise made long ago, that we are and will remain one nation. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the hidden history of the dollar. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more stories behind the everyday objects that shape our world. We'd love to have you as part of our community. See you in the next video. Soft, reflective music begins to play. Welcome back, everyone. Today, we arrive at the final chapter of our journey. A story whispered on the fragile fibers of old paper. We're talking about the 1877 $1 bill, a piece of history that, while no longer found in our wallets, has left an indelible mark on the very currency we use today. This isn't just about a banknote. It's about a nation's evolution, captured in ink and paper. So, let's step back in time to an era of profound change and uncover the last whisper of this remarkable bill. The year is 1877. America is healing from the deep wounds of the Civil War and navigating the turbulent waters of Reconstruction. The nation's financial system was, to put it mildly, a chaotic symphony. We had gold certificates, silver certificates, national banknotes, and of course, the United States notes, or legal tenders. It was a complex, sometimes confusing, web of currency. In the midst of this, the series of 1877 $1 bill was conceived. But what made it so special? It was designed to be a United States note, part of the greenbacks first issued to finance the Civil War. These notes were controversial, not backed by gold or silver, but by the full faith and credit of the government. Imagine holding one. The paper itself feels different, a blend of linen and cotton, more substantial than the crisp bills of today. The design is a work of art, a stark contrast to modern simplicity. On the front, a striking portrait of George Washington, not the familiar one we see on our current dollar, but a more stoic, commanding image based on a painting by Gilbert Stuart. The intricate lathe work, the swirling patterns known as guilloche, wasn't just for beauty. It was a cutting-edge anti-counterfeiting measure, a complex visual puzzle designed to thwart forgers who plagued the young nation's economy. Every line was a declaration of authenticity, a promise from the government to its people. Turn the bill over, and you're greeted by a masterpiece of engraving. The reverse is dominated by a large, ornate X, and the word one interwoven with complex geometric patterns. This design is often called the Soho's reverse. It's bold, almost aggressive in its declaration of value. But the most fascinating part is the intricate legal text printed on it. This text declared the note as legal tender for all debts, public and private, except for duties on imports and interest on the public debt. This little clause was a constant reminder of the ongoing debate about the nature of American money. Was it real money, like gold, or just a promise? This very text fueled political battles that would shape American economic policy for decades. The 1877 $1 bill wasn't just a piece of currency. It was a political statement. It represented the triumph of a strong central government, one that could issue and back its own money without relying solely on precious metals. For the common person, this greenback was a symbol of stability in a post-war world. It was the money you used to buy groceries, pay for a train ticket, or start a small business. It flowed through the veins of a recovering nation, helping to stitch the economy back together, one transaction at a time. It was the people's money, a tangible piece of the federal government in their pocket. However, the life of this specific series was relatively short. As the 19th century drew to a close, the American financial system continued to evolve. The push for a standardized, more secure currency system was gaining momentum. The Gold Standard Act of 1900 would further shift the landscape, and with the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913, the era of diverse currency types like the United States notes began to wane. New designs and new series of $1 bills were introduced, each reflecting the changing times, technologies, and aesthetic sensibilities of the era. The ornate, almost Gothic design of the 1877 note gave way to the cleaner, more standardized look we are familiar with. So, where did they all go? Many were simply worn out from circulation, returned to the Treasury, and destroyed. Others were tucked away in family Bibles, forgotten in old desks, or saved by early collectors who saw their historical value. Today, finding a series of 1877 $1 bill, especially in good condition, is a collector's dream. Each surviving note is a time capsule, a direct link to the Gilded Age. It carries the invisible fingerprints of farmers, merchants, soldiers, and factory workers who used it in their daily lives. It's a silent witness to a period of immense industrial growth, political debate, and social change. But the legacy of the $1,877 isn't confined to dusty collector's albums. Its story flows like an undercurrent through the very fabric of our modern money. The fundamental concept it championed that the value of currency can be based on the trust and stability of its issuing government is the bedrock of our entire financial system today. The anti-counterfeiting technologies it pioneered have evolved into the sophisticated security features we see in our bills now, from color-shifting ink to security threads. The 1877 note was a crucial step in the journey from financial chaos to the ordered system we now take for granted. It was a bridge between the Wild West of early American currency and the unified, permanent system of the Federal Reserve. And so, we close this chapter. The 1877 $1 bill may no longer circulate. Its physical presence faded from our daily lives, but its spirit endures. It's a quiet echo in the rustle of a new bill, a faint whisper in the hum of the global economy. It reminds us that money is more than just paper. It's a story, a promise, and a reflection of the nation that creates it. It stands as a timeless legacy of America's journey from chaos to order, from a fragile promise to a lasting permanence. The paper may be gone, but its whisper remains, a timeless echo of history. Thank you for joining me on this incredible journey through time. If you enjoyed this exploration, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more stories hidden within the objects we see every day. We'll see ya in the next one.